It is a Wednesday, and that means we are talking issues related to the environment and conservation. It is our Going Green feature, and today we are focusing on elephant poaching. SANParks says 504 rhinos and 67 elephants were killed due to poaching at the Kruger National Park last year. And whilst the rate of rhino poaching seems to be declining in the park, it is the opposite for elephants. It's understood that elephants are now being targeted there, and there are growing concerns about the numbers that are being killed. In 2014, conservationists raised concerns that poaching syndicates decimating the East and Central African elephant populations would move further south, making Southern Africa their next target. Reported budget cuts in countries like Botswana have exacerbated the situation, with suggestions that trophy hunting and illegal poaching are on the rise. We're joined now on the line by Chief Ranger at SANParks, Nicholas Funda. Good evening to you, Mr. Funda, and thank you for talking to us. Now, the last time we saw this level of elephant poaching was in the 1980s, was it not?
Yeah, it's true, Bongani. It was in the 1980s.
What's prompted the rise now?
There are a couple of things that one can attribute to the rise now. One is the poaching. I'm going to talk about Kruger National Park, to be specific. The poaching in Kruger National Park is happening north of the Oliphant River, and where we have lesser rhinos there compared to the rest of the park.
So would that suggest, Mr. Funda, that poachers are losing the fight against the rhino in terms of the interventions that have happened and now turning to elephants?
I think there's some truth in what you said, because we suspect that the rhino poachers in the north, they have changed their species target. Now they are targeting elephants. Do we have any figures? We have figures, Bongani. If we, as you in your introduction, you helped me. If we look at maybe from 2014, there were only 2 elephants that were poached in Kruger National Park in 2014. 2015, there were 24. 2016, there were 46, and 2017, there were 67. From this small data, one can pick up that there is an increase in elephant poaching in Kruger National Park.
So obviously, as you say, then there's that steady rise. If your efforts against rhino poaching seem to be working, what assistance have you brought in to deal with this latest species target, as you call it?
Well, the lessons we have learned from rhino poaching, it's easy to take those lessons and take them into the elephant poaching. And I want to tell maybe South Africans that we are ready to face the challenge. The experience that we have taken and we have learned, we're going to take it up to this elephant poaching.
Are you bringing the military in at all to come and assist in terms of the efforts against this illegal activity?
In South Africa, I think we are lucky where we have the security cluster that has recognized that wildlife poaching is a national crisis, and therefore they've made military and police available to assist the rangers. The police are responsible to clean the park from outside. The military, because we are bordering 2 different countries, the military is responsible for border, and they've extended their mandate to include also wildlife counter-poaching exercises.
You're talking about what's happening in the park on the ground, but if we look at the wider issue, we know there was a ban on all sales of ivory products in China, for example. That came into force at the beginning of the year. It was hailed by conservationists. Has it helped?
Well, maybe it's too early. You know, when these things happen, sometimes they make an announcement that on that particular day there will be a ban. And therefore, the message we are sending to the criminals is that maybe you must hunt as much as you can, because there will be a ban in a particular period. Therefore, we're going to see the results not very quickly. We're going to see the results in the short to medium term.
There is a view that once-off sales of stockpiles can actually help increase poaching because it becomes easier to launder illegal ivory. What's SANParks' view on those sales when they happen?
Well, we think in SANParks, maybe it's time that the wildlife fund itself, because the poaching costs money, and there is a general, at a global scale, there is a donor fatigue when it comes to funding for poaching. And therefore, we need to look at alternative revenues to protect our wildlife. And therefore, an opportunity to sell the stockpiles will really help in the conservation of rhinos and elephants.
But how do you deal with the criticism that it's also an avenue for those who are already keeping illegal piles to then be able to launder their piles illegally?
Well, Bogan, I will give an example that people are stealing Toyota vehicles. Toyota has never stopped selling Toyota vehicles. And I don't think that I'll go back into also to another natural resource, diamonds. There are black diamonds that are out there, but they are also clean diamonds. Surely, as a world, we are more cooperative now. We can develop mechanisms to control the illegal penetration of the black market products.
Fair point. What does this do for tourism?
Well, what is due for tourism, and it's something that we must be worried. There are a couple of things that come into my mind in terms of tourism. The rhino poaching and elephant poaching, we're dealing with armed criminals, and at times we are worried maybe one day the tourism might be affected with these criminals. And secondly, we are thinking that it might impact negatively if the numbers dwindle down, so that the tourists, they can hardly see these animals. But I'm thinking that as South Africans, we cannot reach that stage where animals are becoming extinct. I don't think that will ever happen under our watches.
Absolutely, and it's a fight we dare not lose. That's, of course, SANParks Chief Ranger Nicholas Funda. In fact, nearly 100,000 have been lost on the continent just in the last decade. We hope, of course, that we don't find ourselves in this same situation as we've seen with rhino. And talking of which, of course, rhino conservation stakeholders held the first ever Northwest Rhino Poaching Summit, I beg your pardon, in the Pilanesberg in the National Park near Rustenburg today. There, they emphasized that the only way to effectively curb the onslaught against the rhino is to work with communities, particularly those who stay near reserves. And although a national decrease in rhino poaching has been noted, there have been increases in particular provinces like the Northwest, where 96 were poached on state and private reserves.
This is a summit where stakeholders are strategizing on how to save the rhinos in the Northwest Province. Last year, 68 rhinos were slaughtered, 28 on private reserves. At this rate, the province is likely to lose 80 rhinos to poaching by the end of this year. Government has considered that more needs to be done.
You find private sector dealing with it its own way, government dealing it with its own way. That is why we are saying let's enforce and come together and say what will be the best method if we are together, pull resources together, pull ideas together.
The Northwest Parks Board says it's everyone's responsibility to be aware of rhino poaching in the province.
I think it's also just important that everyone need to be aware of the gravity of the issue, and that we are facing the threat of losing rhinos from the province. I think we don't want to get to that day that we've seen the last rhino being poached in the province.
Dion Stradom owns a private lodge in Pilanesberg. They have formed a trust to combat poaching.
We formed a trust, a conservation trust, to not just do anti-poaching but also conservation projects. We've got a pangolin project, and we appointed a guy to do some patrols, a reaction officer.
The summit is expected to conclude on Thursday. after which resolutions will be tabled. Bafetile Mwerani, SABC News, Pilanesberg National Park, Northwest.